Well, after a long break, I am back, and we are going to be discussing some playoff racing as the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs are now in their semifinals with the round of 8 set, and now these drivers will take the first step to get themselves into the Championship 4, starting at Las Vegas. And on today's episode, we will look at the remaining championship contenders, how they shape up for these next 3 tracks, and we will also discuss Martin Truex Jr.'s mediocre playoff run and which 4 drivers I believe will be racing at Phoenix for the championship. So let's dive right in. So before we get started on this week's episode, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. If you are looking to update or upgrade your hunting apparel, then hunttoharvest.com is where you need to go. Their new fall collection is out now, where they have several new shirt designs for both short sleeve and long sleeves, as well as new rope hats in stock. They also still have a great selection of shirts from their spring collection, which is now on sale, and that mystery box special is still going on as well, where you can get 3 designs sent to you for just $33, and for $11 a shirt and the high quality product that Hunt to Harvest puts out, you're not going to find a better deal anywhere else. So head on over to hunttoharvest.com by clicking on the link in the description below, and when you check out, be sure to use that promo code RADNEY18923 at checkout for even more savings. That's RADNEY 18923 at hunttoharvest.com. So AJ Allmendinger won Sunday's race at the Charlotte Roval, becoming the first non-playoff driver to win this season. And with it being a cutoff race, there were 4 drivers whose championship hopes ended. That included Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, and Ross Chastain. And even though their championships ended, all 4 of these guys had strong years, nothing to keep their heads down about, especially Bubba Wallace making his first playoff run and nearly making it into the round of 8. Kyle Busch in his first year with Richard Childress Racing, 3 victories, also nearly making it to the round of 8, making it much further than a lot of people thought at the beginning of the year. And Brad Keselowski and the huge turnaround that RFK had this season. He didn't make it to victory lane, but he was very strong throughout the season and was somebody who looked like you could see making a deep run in the playoffs. And for Ross Chastain, he showed speed throughout the year. He won at Nashville, but they just never seemed to be able to get it together after the second half of the year. I thought we would see a much more aggressive Ross at this stage in the playoffs, but unfortunately his time has ended in this year's playoffs, but still a good solid season for Trackhouse. So now we're down to our final 8 drivers, and on the surface, looking at how they stack up at the upcoming tracks, the 4 drivers who are currently above the cut line, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Martin Truex Jr., as well as Denny Hamlin, they are previous winners at the next 3 tracks: Las Vegas, Homestead, Miami, and Martinsville. And at Martinsville, you can add Christopher Bell, who is the lone driver below that cut line who has won at these tracks. He won at last year's Martinsville race in walk-off fashion to get himself in the Championship 4. But even though the other drivers that are below the cut line that I didn't mention, Ryan Blaney, Tyler Reddick, as well as Chris Buescher, they still have some pretty solid stats at these tracks for the most part. Starting with Ryan Blaney, at Las Vegas, he does have the 6th highest average finish, but he has not scored a top 10 there since 2021. At Homestead, his best finish was a 3rd back in 2020. Other than that, he has no top 10s or top 5s. Martinsville is going to be the track to watch for Blaney. This is his best track in the final round. He has the highest average finish of all drivers. He has 7 top 5s and 15 starts here, finished 2nd in back-to-back races in 2020, and he finished 3rd in this race last season. And what really impressed me most about Blaney in his time at Martinsville, in 15 starts, he has completed all but 4 laps. And that's a pretty impressive stat in itself, even without the highest average finish. Now, as for Tyler Reddick, at Las Vegas, he has 3 top 10s in 7 starts. He did win the pole here last season and showed a lot of speed, but just wasn't able to get the finish that he really deserved. Homestead is where I believe Reddick's going to have his best race, and it's his best track. In just 3 starts at the track, he has 2 top 5s and 2 top 10s, including finishing 2nd in 2021. And this is the kind of track that definitely fits his style. He's going to be able to run up against the wall. He's going to be able to change grooves, move around the track, and find what works for him. As for Martinsville, that's definitely his worst track on the schedule. And he has 1 top 10 out of 7 starts at the track, and that 1 top 10 was back in 2021. Since then, he's been unable to finish inside the top 15 at Martinsville. Now, for Christopher Bell, Las Vegas and Homestead, like Reddick, they're going to fit his style of racing. He finished 5th in the spring at Las Vegas. Last year, he looked pretty strong before getting caught up in that controversial crash with Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson. And at Homestead, like Reddick, he only has 3 starts, but he did finish 8th in his first start back in 2020. And in the last 2 races, even though the finishes might not show it, he did have a lot of speed. He hasn't started any worse than 3rd. So he definitely has the speed to be competitive there. Now at Martinsville, as I said earlier, he did win there last season, but don't let that finish fool you. And while he hasn't been abysmal at Martinsville, I just don't think it's the track where he still would feel comfortable getting into a must-win situation at. And finally, there's Chris Buescher. And really, Buescher and Truex to me are the biggest question marks as far as drivers in the playoffs. Buescher only has 1 top 10 in 13 starts at Las Vegas. He has no top 10s in 7 starts at Miami, and just 1 at Martinsville in 16 starts there. But RFK Racing has definitely improved, and Buescher has outperformed at tracks this year where he doesn't have the strongest stats. So if I had to pick one race to keep an eye on for Buescher, I would take the short track Martinsville. I think he has performed better at short tracks this season than he has at 1.5 miles. Now, looking at the drivers above the cut line, I mainly want to focus on Martin Truex Jr. because I think he is the one who is above that cut line that is most likely to be eliminated. It has been a very mediocre playoff for Martin Truex Jr. He hasn't finished higher than 17th, and that was at Texas. So no top 15s so far in the playoffs this deep into it. This team has played the playoff system exactly for what it is. With the amount of playoffs points they receive from wins and getting the regular season championship, it has allowed them to reach this point, even though, as I said, he hasn't gotten a top 15 finish. At the start of the playoffs, I, like many others, had Martin Truex Jr. as my pick to win the championship. I mean, going into the regular season finale, he has scored 6 top 10s in a row, including a win back at Loudon, and momentum was definitely on this team's side. So I have to ask the question, has this team just treaded water and done what they needed to do to get through the first couple rounds, hoping to make it to this point so they can flip the switch and go all out and gain all the momentum they can before Phoenix? Or has this team truly lost all the speed, all the momentum they had gained in the regular season? We'll definitely find out this weekend starting at Las Vegas. Martin is strong at this track. Normally they have good runs here. And at this point in the playoffs, if they are just treading water, you can't just ride around now thinking that it's going to get you into the championship 4. Truex is just 15 points above that cut line. And say we go into Martinsville and he winds up in a points battle with really any of the drivers left in the playoffs. That is going to be a tough battle for Martin. Because since the start of the playoffs, he has ranked 24th on the amount of points gained by all drivers, and that is by far the lowest of any of the playoff drivers. And I know Martin's good at Martinsville, but so is Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Ryan Blaney. These aren't drivers that Martin will want to go head-to-head with if it comes down to it. And at this moment, if I had to pick my championship 4, it would look completely different than my original prediction at the start of the playoffs. I think the final 4 will be William Byron, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick. All 4 of these drivers have been the most consistent in the playoffs. They're in the top 5 in points gained during the playoffs. And I think you see Larson or Byron come away with the victory at Las Vegas. I can see Tyler Reddick winning at Homestead. If not, Kyle Larson should be strong there. Then at Martinsville, with the way this short track package is, and on this next gen car and how difficult it is to pass, track position is going to be the key thing throughout the day. And if you have Denny Hamlin up there in contention, he's going to be harder to pass than Ryan Newman, because Denny, he wants to get that first championship and get that monkey off his back and kind of complete his career. He's won everything but that championship. So there's obviously a chance we could have a non-playoff driver get the win like we saw with AJ Allmendinger this past weekend at Charlotte. And if that happens, then you have opened up a whole nother spot for points. And once again, I just do not have the confidence that Martin Truex Jr. would be able to do that, especially if he's racing up against a Ryan Blaney, who has been stronger in the playoffs, who has actually won in the playoffs this year and is strong at Martinsville. And before we sign off on that, just wanted to talk about silly season for just a second. We had some breaking news today that Sheldon Creed will not be returning to Richard Childress Racing next year to drive that 2 car in the Xfinity Series. And this is coming off the heels where Carson Hocevar just announced, I believe it was yesterday, that he will be driving the 77 Spire car, the car that Ty Dillon is currently driving. So obviously that's where a lot of people went thinking, okay, this is where Ty Dillon's going to go, and it very well may be. But Ty Dillon is still tied, has ties to the Colleague Racing in the Cup Series, their 16 car, with the belief that AJ Allmendinger will be going back to the Xfinity Series. But looking at the Sheldon Creed news, that was pretty surprising. And it seems like that's been the deal with silly season this year, is seeing announcements that was really nobody saw coming. But for Sheldon, he hasn't won yet in the Xfinity Series driving for Childress, but he has been strong. He's really gotten some bad breaks. He's been in contention for wins. Just things don't always go his way, whether it's self-inflicted or just getting caught up in somebody's mess. And when Richard Childress Racing put out the initial statement, a lot of people were shocked by it and kind of felt like it was a cold statement by Richard Childress Racing. It was pretty much, and I'm paraphrasing here, like, Sheldon Creed isn't driving for us next year. It is what it is. We'll announce who the next driver will be in the near future. Not a we appreciate all that he's done for the team or anything like this. It didn't come across that it was a cordial breakup. Then Sheldon put out a statement himself where he makes it sound like he is the one who made this decision not to come back. And that very well may be the case. There has been tension between himself and Austin Hill, most recently at Bristol, which in that incident, I sided with Sheldon Creed on that one. It looked like it was just a typical short track racing deal, but Austin Hill took exception to it and let his feelings be known. And Austin, plain and simple, he's the future of Richard Childress Racing. They just signed him to a huge extension, and it's only a matter of time before he makes the jump to the Cup Series for Childress. And Austin has earned that. He's definitely been the better driver of the two. But I feel like that's overshadowed Sheldon a little bit, because Sheldon has done a solid job, and he's getting ready to compete for a spot in the Championship 4. He's made it to the Final 8. Right now he's below the cut line, but he still has a shot. And if Sheldon made the decision to depart from Richard Childress Racing, he wouldn't do that without having a plan already established, or at least a ride already lined up for himself. Because this is a pretty big team in the Xfinity Series that you're leaving with a direct pipeline to the Cup Series. And of course, everyone's jumping in with their rumors or their beliefs of where he'll go, and they all make sense. You have Colleague Racing that could have an open Xfinity ride, or possibly the Cup Series in the 16 car. The biggest one I've heard is Joe Gibbs Racing, how he could make the jump over there, which would be a step up competition-wise, and I think would be good for Sheldon's career, especially since now it's seeming like Riley Herbst wouldn't be making the jump back to Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series when that seemed to be the original plan. So now Joe Gibbs may be searching for another driver and may have gotten a better one, getting Sheldon Creed over Riley Herbst. So the curveballs just keep coming for this silly season. I don't know when to expect announcement from any of these drivers. Richard Childress Racing said it should be in the near future. Could be in as little as a week or two. I figure an announcement would be made for that before the end of the season. So now all eyes will be on who replaces Sheldon Creed in this car. Could it be Ty Dillon? The family ties are obviously there. I like Ty Dillon as a driver. I don't think he's gotten quite the fair shake on the Cup Series side of things like his brother Austin has. I'm not a hater on either of the Dillon brothers. I think they are talented. I think they're good race car drivers. And for Ty, this would give him a chance to kind of hit the reset and, who knows, maybe become like a Justin Allgaier, a solid Xfinity driver that will get you in the playoffs, compete for wins, and possibly get you in the running for some championships. Also, another name getting thrown around out there is Noah Gragson, who is rumored to be tied to a lot of different rides, and nothing has played out yet. So there's still some pretty big names, some other ones, kind of out there. You got Matt DiBenedetto, who's looking for a ride. Could he go and pull up a driver from the Truck Series, or a driver like Lane Riggs, who's made some starts in the Xfinity Series for Colleague this season? It's kind of an unknown at this point, and like I said, I'm sure we will find out, though, who will be in this 2-car next season before the end of the season. And for Sheldon's announcement, it all depends on where he's going. We know Colleague is getting close to announcing the driver of their 16 car. Will that be him, or will Joe Gibbs Racing have an announcement after the season is over of what their Xfinity Series driver lineup will look like? So between the silly season news and the playoffs really getting down to the wire. It's going to be a very interesting next few weeks as we get ready to wrap up this season and see, number one, who our champions are going to be, as well as who's going where for 2024. But that'll wrap up today's episode of 3 Wide. As always, thank y'all for joining me and listening along. It's great to be back on this platform. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to this podcast from so you will know when our new episodes drop. We're in the final stretch of the season, so it is only going to get more and more intense from here. And also, don't forget to go check out our sponsor, hunttoharvest.com, and check out their awesome new selection of hunter apparel. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week, and we will see y'all next time on 3 Wide.